Industry statistics show that US citizens received more than 3.3 billion robocalls during the month of June alone, and that was up by 11% compared to the number in May. So it's clear to see that robocalling and caller ID spoofing are growing and major problems for communication service providers and their subscribers. So, what can be done to address this situation? Well, I'm talking today with Matt Rosenberg. He's the Chief Revenue Officer at next-gen signaling and security solutions company NetNumber. So, Matt, how have we reached this point? And what are the market trends and forces that have brought upon this massive rise in robocalling?
Sure, great. Thanks, Ray. Great question. A lot of things have happened over the course of several years. And this is not just a regional-based problem, this is a global-based problem. But certain markets experience that faster than other markets, like in the North American market with the US and Canada. So when we look at some of the stats out there today, they're quite staggering. Almost 200,000 unwanted calls per minute happen in North America. That represents about 47% of illegal scam calls taking place, which is almost 43 million people in the North American market. It truly is something that is a problematic and is growing at a very rapid pace. When we extrapolate that back out to look at the monetary impact, it's forecasted almost $10 billion of monetary losses taking place, which is just truly staggering. Other things have happened within the regulatory community that have helped drive some of the responses that we're seeing across the globe today. So, for example, the U.S. Act called TRACE, which makes all carriers in the U.S. market having to go adopt some level of stir-shaken solutions by the middle of next year. The Canadian market has happened a little bit quicker than that, and their deadline for implementation is September of this year. And when we look at some of the habitual changes that have taken place within the global population, truly staggering numbers that we see. Almost 80% of all calls that take place go unanswered because people don't know the caller ID. The problem is some of these calls are legitimate. And so how do we as a global vendor help end users, subscribers, and service providers ensure that legitimate calls are taking place? And that's what we're trying to solve in the global community.
So how exactly are fraudsters and nuisance callers attacking the market and subscribers?
First, to understand that is to understand that there is a lot of intelligence taking place behind some of these bad actors. So what's true today may not be true tomorrow. But there are three main areas that we tend to see in the marketplace today. The first is through robocalling. I'm sure we've all experienced some level of that, unfortunately, where there is a predictive set of dialers out there that continuously call and try and spam a number for someone to go pick up and have fraudulent activity take place. The second activity is called CLI spoofing or caller ID spoofing. This is where the bad actors will take a number, they'll spoof it to make it look like something that's recognizable to the subscriber, in the hopes that they pick up and then something happens. The third, which we're seeing a lot more prevalent outside of the North American market, but it's also here as well, is called wangiri, typically known as one and done. And what this really does is still caller ID spoofing takes place, but it's to a particular number and they dial many, many times with one ring and then hang up. And the hopes there is that the end user will see many missed calls from the same particular number, deem it must be something important, then they pick up and some fraudulent activity happens. The big keynote there is these are just three of many variations of things happening in the globe today.
So subscribers are probably feeling very angsty about all of this. What can the communication service providers do to try and restore trust and make subscribers feel more secure about this situation?
It's a great question, and I think that question is going to continue to be around for some time. To understand where we have to get to is understand the past a little bit. The telephony networks were designed with a legacy set of protocols called SS7 or TDM. And this basically was an inherent trust system within the older telephone networks. And so when a call was placed, it came from a trusted source. And once it came into another network, the entire time it was in that network, it was trusted. Therefore, implicitly implied there is that it was a guaranteed call with security around it. Time has moved on. Technology's changed. There's more open standards out there today. Most of the calls we see today are over some IP or VoIP or telephony type of call, which allows additional gaps to be exposed and taken advantage of by the bad actors. Unfortunately, there's no way to guarantee every single call is going to be legitimate or unwanted and blocked. But what we can do is when we look at how we can instill trust into the community is giving the end users the confidence through technology that the calls that do come in are legitimate calls. And so it's a little bit easier to identify a legitimate call than it is to figure out if it's an unwanted or spam call. And so some of the services and solutions we're looking at from the industry is really focused on how to give the end user or consumer confidence that it is a legitimate call.
So, what exactly is the industry doing to address these problems?
There is a lot of things happening today. First, there's a whole range of industry standards out there and industry bodies that work on this every single day within working groups and forums. The areas like 3GPP, ETSI, GSMA, all of them have great mind trust and come together over the last couple of years to put together solutions to enable a trust factor that is different than what it used to be. And this is really predicated along the lines of a authentication and token type of methodology. Today we call that stir shaken, and that's a pretty much universally adopted protocol that's being driven across a lot of different markets, predominantly in North America first, but we're seeing that roll out across Europe and other places. And what this really means is there is a secure mechanism between a token and authentication handshake between the originating call and the destination subscriber or end user. And in there is a complex set of mathematical algorithms that basically say if the algorithm passes, then connect the call. If the algorithm fails, then fail the call. And so we see a whole range of these type of solutions taking place that have a different level of authentication between a token and a validation of digitally signing a particular call.
So, what is NetNumber bringing to the market that's going to address these challenges and address the needs of the market?
So we built a fantastic cloud-based service where, based upon all the industry standards bodies, is a suite of stir-shaking type of solutions that we can offer to the industry. The top five that we offer today are under a family name called Guaranteed Caller. And this allows various different market segments based upon where they sit in the ecosystem to deploy these solutions. So Guaranteed Caller Service Provider, for example, allows service providers to digitally sign and authenticate and validate calls between different service providers. Guaranteed Caller International, as another example, allows internationally based carriers who have to deliver traffic back into the US that will need to be authenticated by the middle of next year to have that authentication and token validation take place before the call is connected. We also see some other products that we are bringing to market called Guaranteed Caller TDM Shaken. Stir Shaken was originally designed over the IP network. Today, however, there's still an awful lot of calls happening over the legacy or TDM networks. And so this particular product allows carriers to deploy a little bit of technology on premise that reaches back into the cloud IP network so they can take a originating call on the legacy network and still provide a level of stir shaken services interconnecting back into the IP network. We also have a product called Guaranteed Caller National, and this allows infrastructure to be deployed on a national level if there are certain regulatory authorities or bodies that want to deploy a set of solutions that take place on a national or regional scale. And finally, we have a Guaranteed Caller Enterprise. And this allows enterprises to effectively digitally sign and authenticate calls either between enterprises or allow other enterprises to digitally sign on their behalf. So these suite of products all are available through a cloud-based solution as well as some level of on-premise solution if that's required as well.
Well, Matt, it sounds like you've got all of the bases covered there with your suite of offers. So thanks very much for explaining what's going on in the market today and for joining us and chatting about this great challenge for the industry. Thank you very much, Matt.
My pleasure. Thank you, Ray.